I think painting is the physical manifestation of the rhythms of the body, which is in tune with the universe, and that painting never lies. These paintings are pure visual statements. Painting like that is like an athlete being in the zone. If you think about it too much, you'll never do it. Trust your instincts and experience. On this edition of Art Now, we'll look at the work of Jerry Savage.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of Art Now, a program where we talk with artists whose work is part of our community. I am John Morrison, and I'll be your host. Our guest today is Jerry Savage. Thank you, Jerry, for allowing us in your home to discuss your work. Jerry received his BFA degree in painting from the Art Institute of Chicago, and also his MFA degree in painting from the University of Southern California. Jerry came here in 1962 to teach painting at the University of Illinois and continued teaching here at the U of I Department of Art and Design until he retired in 2000. Well, Jerry, can you tell us a little bit about your background, perhaps a bit about what led you to choose art and teaching as a career? Any encouragement from family members or teachers along the way?
Well, it's been a very, in retrospect, a very dynamic journey. I was raised in Hyde Park in Chicago. My father wanted to be an artist. But he never went to school, and he was involved with a lot of activities, too complex to talk about. But we came from a very modest family. In school, I was a very inconsistent student. I was not interested in learning academically, but I drew a lot, and I got a lot of approval from that. And I felt that one of the secrets of life is you do what's easy. You accept what you have, what your talents are, and go with it.
Right.
And so I had this approval, and plus this formal introduction to art classes. Then in Hyde Park, on 57th Street, they had artist studios. And these structures were built for the World's Fair to sell tchotchkes. So artists moved in after the fair, and they had their paintings in the window. And I used to walk by and look at these paintings. And the artists were very kind to children. And occasionally you could go into the studios and see their paintings.
What age were you at this point?
Well, I guess I was about, very young. I was like, 4th grade, 5th grade. And I always felt that there's time and place for everything. And that when I would be interested in something, it would sort of naturally happen. And I thought it was more important to somehow discover who I was, but I had no idea who I am. It was all fun and interesting.
That's good. Any major influences on your art that you might care to share with us, or are there any mentors, or shall we say artist heroes that you might like to talk about?
Well, I was very fortunate when I went to school at the Art Institute of Chicago. My painting teacher was Paul Wiegard, and he was trained at the Bauhaus. His teachers were Paul Klee and Kandinsky.
Wow.
And he was brought to Chicago by Mies van der Rohe to teach drawing. But the thing that fascinated me about him, he was extremely kind to me, and I was somewhat naive about art. I drew all the time, but I drew, silly things, kids, cartoons and things like that. And but he had a very open mind. I was so naive when I first went to the Art Institute. I thought Peter Paul Rubens was a candy bar. I had no historical background. Well, the thing that fascinated me about Paul Wiegard's background, coming from the Bauhaus, was that his paintings were anti-Bauhaus. Now, he was German, of course, but he married a Jewish woman. And he fled Germany in the 30s, late 30s. And, but his work was entirely different. It was anti-Bauhaus. And that really intrigued me. Why would he reject the philosophical premises of the Bauhaus? He did these beautiful portraits, paintings of his wife. And it always amazed me that he would reject that important aspect of his life. So that was a big influence, the kindness of Paul Wiegard, this naive kid from Chicago. I came right from high school to the Art Institute, and at that time, most of the students were much older than me, and many of them were Korean War veterans. And they painted with so much magic. I looked at their paintings and I thought I saw God. It was so absolutely beautiful. So I had a sort of sense of what art can do and the element of personality and culture it can communicate. But I think the big influence philosophically is when I went to California, I needed a part-time job. I was married and we had a son, so I needed to work. I got a job as a stained glass window designer, Jutton Studio in Pasadena. And part of my training was to copy the windows of Chartres Cathedral for 3 months. And that's all I did, copied them. I realized that the power of symbolic content and that art had content. And they were dealing with issues that almost transcended religion. They were dealing with complex, universal metaphors. That was a big influence.
Wow. This was when you were working on your MFA program?
Right. Studying painting. It was so funny. While I was working, of course, going to school in painting, I won an award from the Los Angeles County Museum, Los Angeles and vicinity show. I won first prize. So I was so proud. I went to my boss, told him I won first prize. He said, "Get to work, you're a designer." I like that.
Back on track, right?
Back on track.
Jerry, when we go to your website, which is jerrysavageartist.com, we see that your paintings are grouped into 4 major categories. We have face highways, nocturnes, narratives, and improvisations. Do you have any comments on these 4 categories that you might like to share with us? For example, are there any personal favorites among them? Perhaps they are a natural evolution of your work, with an underlying philosophy that you might like to share with us?
Well, those are very good questions. I like all my paintings. They're like my children, and they represent moments in time. And so I accept them for what they are. The thing that sort of confused me as an artist, looking at contemporary art, that artists I admired seemed to have one style, of course with the exception of Picasso. And I felt that my work would change according to, maybe every decade. And I was always curious about that. Why does this happen? I came to terms with this because I think art reflects the dynamics of culture, of a time period. That things occur in which the artist is intuitively aware of. These are nonverbal things. They are, part of the dynamics of the universe. And the artist really is looking down the wormhole and trying to find purpose and order. So my work represents a cultural phenomenon, and I think that's important. I respect art of the Renaissance, of different time periods, and the art did reflect cultural issues. I think that perhaps all art has cultural issues. Sometimes it's so close to you, you can't determine what it means.
Right.
But I think that there's a philosophical premise to all these works. And you can appreciate a work of art on many, many levels. But the common denominator in all these works is the dynamics of the person. You sense that someone who has a view, an insight, a conviction, confidence, to deal with the timelessness of art. One thing I've discovered with my work is always about movement and time and change. And of course, one of my favorite philosophers is Heraclitus. And he talks about the dynamics of change and how you adapt to change. And yet, there's a timelessness in addition to change. So those things have always fascinated me.
Okay. In regard to your most recent painting series that we looked at recently in your studio, do you see this latest work as perhaps a fifth category for your work, or a new category? Or do you feel that this work more correctly relates to one of the already 4 existing categories on your website?
They all relate. I'm involved with the idea of movement, highways, and motion, and the physicality of paint, of materials. I think an artist should use materials in a very organic, visceral, sensual way. The paint, the material should become part of your soul. And so I think of my work as this journey, this continuation. And it's very hard, I think when you're young, to accept this process of continual change, because you want clarity and you want control, you want predictability. And life, to a certain extent, is not like that. You have to be quick on your feet. You have to be intuitive. You have to take risk. And you have to enjoy it. It's a gift. And I'm not talking about art as a gift. I'm talking about life as a gift.
Right. Well, I think that joy that you're talking about shows up in a lot of your paintings. I mean, I'm looking at one on the wall right there from the Face Highway series that definitely shows that. What can you tell us about your current collaboration with other professionals on the All's Light sculpture team? And this new effort involves the themes of movement and landscape design.
Well, I was asked to be involved in a project a couple of years ago, and it was designing a park. I thought of an art park, an art journey, and a park of discovery. So that was the beginning, but everything changed so dramatically. Things happened, and so I was involved with conceptual work, a piece of sculpture for a new building on campus. It was a competitive thing, and I didn't make the cut. But that's okay because I learned so much. Well, during that time, I was working with a light scientist, very distinguished man, engineers, landscape people, and I realized that with my sculpture, with the metaphors I was using laser light and LED lighting and computer sequencing of rhythms and new materials, I needed experts in fields, different fields. And I really enjoyed working with them because they had insights that I didn't have. And so this wonderful collaboration occurred. Now, as an artist, you don't collaborate, at least a painter.
Right.
You do your paintings, and you are your own captain.
It's usually a singular effort.
You know, I'm building a ship at sea, plank by plank, and I enjoy that. But collaboration, you need a lot of people, and the dynamics of the personalities of people, to me, is very invigorating. It's like teaching. One thing that I really enjoyed about teaching is the uniqueness of the students.
Right.
They're absolutely precious people. And I learned so much from them. And so maybe in some ways, teaching was a form of collaboration.
Certainly.
Teaching helped me find myself.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I understand that. I've felt that energy that you get back from working with your students. These professionals that you're working with, are these local people at the university?
Well, the main one is a former student of mine, John Clark, who's an architect of international reputation. He's currently working in a lot of projects in China. Well, he contacted me about 2 years ago. He said he just finished a commission at the Aurora Public Library, and he wanted a serious art for the library that would have a philosophical premise to it. And since I was involved with architectural sculpture and landscaping, and thinking about art as functioning in a public space, the idea of a meeting place of people that would reveal not only beauty is extremely important, but have a philosophical, political theme about it at the same time. So that was the beginning. So working with John Clark was amazing. How I met John was so interesting. he wanted to be in my painting class, and he had no experience studying painting in a formal way. And I asked him why he wanted to be in class, and he said, well, he likes painting, but his girlfriend was in my painting class.
I see.
And he had no previous classes, and at that time you had to have prerequisites.
Right.
But I thought that since he wanted to be with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend was her name was April, was a charming, extremely talented woman. I just knew that that her boyfriend would be exceptional. So I said yes. He turned out to be a natural painter, absolutely natural. So I asked him about his background. He said, well, he's studying classical Chinese poetry. And he wanted to be he loved painting. So after my painting class, and a class with Keith Crown, who's a visiting artist from California, watercolors, he decided to switch to painting. But at that time, the school was very rigid, right, that you needed prerequisites. So they told him that he had to take all these design classes and drawing classes and everything else. But he was far beyond that, So he said, well, I'm gonna try something else. So he went over to architecture, and they accepted everything. Became an architect.
That's amazing.
But he was one of my best students, and such a wonderful, complex field of knowledge, wonderful personality. So, 30 years later, he called me. So that was the beginning of the collaboration. And the piece, excuse me, is a wonderful piece. I hate to say that. It sounds like, sort of weird talking about that. But you always think your children are beautiful, right?
Of course, you better.
Of course, my sculpture is dynamic, but it was because of John Clark involvement, working together. It was a wonderful experience. Also, I discovered that being retired, it gives you so much freedom.
Right. And
I think there are two areas of art where you actually can get better when you get older, providing your mind is intact.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Is architecture and art.
Right.
But there are more areas than that. People don't realize that the benefits of age, of experience, it is profound, and I don't think people appreciate the benefits of aging.
I hope there are some benefits.
You think about retiring, going to Florida, and getting a camper and a folding chair and a fishing pole, and that's it. Actually, it's the beginning of a new life, if you look at it properly. It's
right.
Especially in America, you have the opportunity to reinvent your life.
Right. Well, you've certainly been keeping busy in your artwork.
Well, it's all, I don't know if I do what I do. I don't know if it's busy. I don't know if it's good or not, but like your children.
Oh, it's good.
Pretty good. And so, I always felt that on some level, aesthetically, I'm an outsider anyway.
Right.
And that doesn't bother me. I know that people look at the work, and a lot of people won't understand it, and that's okay. But I remember one wonderful faculty member at the U of I, Art Sensabaugh, and I would ask him to sit in my painting critiques. And I remember one thing he said, I thought it was really profound. He said, the more you look, the more you see. So if you have the time, you start to look, you find something. But the thing about art, it makes a strong first impression. So if you dislike it, maybe there's something there. So you go back and see what happens.
Okay. Do you feel that this collaboration with the light sculpture team has also helped this latest series of your own personal paintings in some way?
Well, it's all part of the, the juice. It's, I think you got to have mojo, and you got to use that high-octane fuel. Don't let it go to waste. And remember, it's a gift. It's a gift.
Be sure to check out Jerry's website at jerrysavageartist.com for additional examples of his work, as well as details regarding gallery contact information. Thank you, Jerry, for talking with us today, and we hope that you have enjoyed this edition of Art Now. We also hope that our discussion here will encourage you to explore our local art scene and perhaps even inspire you to make your own art now.